As far as I'm concerned, before we check Naafiri's voice lines, we need to understand who is Naafiri, what is Naafiri. As far as I'm concerned, the only one thing we know is that she was a Darken, she got trapped into Blade, and now she's a dog. Lots of dogs. So, you know, let's see what our Lord and Savior Necrit has to say about Naafiri.
So far, people seem to really like the design and the gameplay of Naafiri, which is really strange. I haven't seen people this united since the release of Set, which was in 2020. A few days ago, Naafiri's story was released right after the cinematic, and it seems to be doing a good job at explaining the story.
There was?
But it leaves out some context and some really important details. And
I mean, I saw the story, but the basic story was that she was a dagger, she was waiting for someone to pick her up, and it was the dogs. That's pretty much the story, but we're not getting explanation about Naafiri herself as a Darken, as the holy warrior, ascended warrior of the Shurima. That's what we need.
And in this case, the context is what drives the entire character.
Exactly.
Especially since in her current state, Naafiri is not really doing much for the universe. So before we dive into Naafiri's lore, let me first give you a quick TLDR on what Naafiri even is. Long time ago, in the deserts of the southern continent, we got the Shuriman Empire, which built the giant sun disk in the middle of their capital city. The sun disk had the power to reflect celestial magic into their chosen warriors, and by doing so, they transformed them into the Ascended God Warriors, which were a lot more powerful humans who also shared appearance with some animals. The theory is that even though the magic...
With some animals, question is, what animal was Varus? Because first of all, he missed the memo. There was a memo. So what animal was he when he was ascended? Hello?
Comes from the Celestials. It seems like some animals on Runeterra are shaped after the Celestial gods. That could be the reason why, for example, Nasus and Renekton are a dog and a crocodile. Anyway, after years and years of creating more and more of the Ascended, the Shurimans got an entire golden army which was easily able to conquer the entire world. And so they slowly started expanding their territory. At least that was until they faced the kingdom of Icathia in the south.
Icathia was slightly different. Also, Jax is rumored to be from Icathia.
The Icathians, led by the Mage King Aksamuk, were not willing to just give up their land. And so, when the Shuriman armies arrived at their doorstep with the Ascended in the front lines, the Icathians fought with everything they got. But it still wasn't enough, so in the end, they had to use their last resort, which meant using magic to rip open a rift so they could use the power of the Void against the Shurimans. Of course, the Icathians didn't know that the Void would literally destroy everything it touched. So,
I mean, as long as it's a good weapon, you know, it's a good weapon. It's like monkeys discovering a fucking nuke. Just don't use it at your home, you know? Use it elsewhere, in the other countries where you are fighting. Just don't use it at home and everything should be fine.
So needless to say, when the Icathians opened up the Void Rift, the maddening power of the Void was unleashed upon Runeterra. And of course, after everything was turned into a purple wasteland, the Shurimans retreated. But at that point, it was already too late, and many of the surviving Ascended started going a bit mad after the Void touched their minds. Thankfully, the glorious Emperor Azir was a good leader. Under his wings, the Ascended stayed united as they clung onto their sanity. At least, that was until the moment Azir got assassinated. And suddenly, the maddening Ascended were left on this world without a leader that could keep them in check. And so, very quickly, these glorious Ascended started turning against each other as they tried to figure out who should be the next leader. What?
Nice. And yeah, that's Zolani who we see in here. Lord knows I cannot wait for her to be released in League of Legends. That's going to be fun. Hopefully she's not going to be a support. That's all I'm asking for. A mid laner would be fun. Yeah, straight up mid laner would be fun. Also, going to the fact that Azir got assassinated, he was assassinated by Zeraf. The main premise of that was slavery. Zeraf was not happy being a slave to Azir. By the way, they were best friends. That's the interesting part. They were best friends, and Azir, who was about to become Ascended Emperor, he wanted, during his coronation, get rid of slavery. He wanted to be a good guy. But before he could do that, good guy Zeraf just took and backstab him. Top 10 enemy betrayals. You know, it is what it is.
What didn't help the situation is that around this time there was an Ascended called Zolani,
Yep.
who started toying with blood magic. And she figured out that this blood magic could help out the situation. Now, this next part I'm going to mention was never fully confirmed, but people were able to piece a lot together through Legends of Runeterra, which is indeed canon. As far as we know, Zolani gave the other Ascended blood magic with the promise of power. It was an easy bait since at this point all the Ascended were fighting for power anyway. But in reality, Zolani cursed everyone with it, because she wanted to use the blood magic to control all the Ascended, and so she could make them stop fighting each other. So
Yeah, basically, in her mind, the idea was if I control everyone, mind control everyone, no one is fighting, because I am everyone. Straight up, Ultron.
in theory, she was actually the good guy. But of
Technically.
course, the other Ascended very quickly realized that Zolani betrayed them, so they broke out of her control, and suddenly all the glorious Ascended were now infused with really powerful blood magic. They went mad over power, they became known as the Darkin, and all together they started the Great Darkin War. This war absolutely annihilated a massive part of all continents. It got so bad that eventually a celestial known as the Aspect of Twilight,
A child.
who at the time was known as Maisha, who would later become Zoe, had to come down from the heavens and use a legendary blade known as the Chalikar to reflect the power of the moon into the Darkin and seal their souls inside the blade.
Big
But of
Sasha.
course, Maisha was still just a single vessel of the Aspect of Twilight. She would never be able to catch all the Darkin on her own. So
What do you mean she wouldn't be able to catch all of the Darkin or them all? I saw a realistic documentary when a mother gives her only child a yellow rat. That child is fucking 10 years old, and that mother tells that child, you have a yellow rat, your job is to go catch other magical creatures in the world. Do not return home until you do. And that shit happened. And that shit happened. And there were, I'm pretty sure, over 140 of those animals in there. So, you know, to catch all of the Darkin for a celestial being? Oh, that should be easy.
she gave the legendary blade to the mortal blacksmiths.
She has the dragon as her pet. Exactly, she has the creator of the fucking universe as her pet. What do you mean she couldn't do it?
So they could learn from it and craft more celestial weapons, and with the help of the celestial magic, the mortals could seal the Darkin inside these weapons themselves. Unfortunately, not only does it seem like over time this knowledge got lost, but also, while touching the Chalikar doesn't infuse Sivir with the power of the Darkin, it seems like the weapons crafted by the mortals are not as powerful. And so when a mortal touches one of these other sealed Darkin, the Darkin can immediately dominate their mind and take over their bodies. So for example, when someone picked up Aatrox's blade, what you see there is not the real Aatrox. That's just the morphed body of a human who picked up the blade. In case you are curious about this entire part in the story, it was all explained in the story called The Twilight of the Gods. But that should be a TLDR version of the Shuriman story, even though it wasn't really that short. So in short, Naafiri was a Shuriman Ascended. She slowly went mad alongside with everyone else, and she got infused with blood magic, after which she got eventually sealed inside a dagger. From that point on, she was just waiting for anyone to touch the blade so that she could free herself. That's all you really need to know, so now let's dive right into Naafiri's story, and let's see how well she fits into this universe.
In the pitch-black Shuriman night, few sounds are as terrifying as the howls of the Dune Hounds. Those who hear their piercing call on the wind know to keep their hand on their sword hilt, and their horse well rested, for the ravenous packs that rove these sands will chase whatever game they can find in the desert. One pack in particular is driven by a hunger deeper and more ancient than that of any mere beast. It is the hunger of a creature who spent ages eating nothing at all. For centuries, Naafiri remained in a crypt, her spirit bound to an ancient throwing dagger, unable to move or speak. The weapon lay inert as her soul pondered the past. Naafiri was powerful, having almost led the Darkin. How easily could she have bested any of them in combat and became the rightful ruler? Yet, how easily she had been tricked by that awful aspect Maisha. And
Fucking child. Again, children are ruining everything. But once again, I'm kinda not getting enough backstory on Naafiri herself in here.
cursed to embody these inanimate steel blades. Shame and regret consumed her thoughts. If she could get another chance, if she could only find another host, a new vessel, all she needed was a hand to grip her blade. Just a touch. At last, the day came and the doors of her tomb burst open. She sensed the sweet relief of a fresh desert wind, her first in ages, and something else, a human presence. He has come, my host, my sweet unwitting vessel, thought the darkened soul. But the visitor was aware of her magic. He carefully picked up her dagger with metal thongs, and
How to resist Darkin 101. Don't go just with your bare hand. Have a bit of tongues, Judge. Imagine wielding Aatrox with these. Imagine wielding Rust with these. That's it. How to counter every single Darkin, bro. That's simple.
placed it into a thick lead-lined cloth.
Big
Grabbing the
brain.
blade tightly, he took great care not to touch it, and set off across the desert under the late afternoon sun. Despair overcame Naafiri as she felt the puddling movements of the man's horse across the sands. Was she doomed to this form, this waking nightmare of impotence, for eternity? She felt the steps of the horse quickening as the sunset approached, and sensed the distant howls of the dune hounds carried by the wind. This was her opportunity. Without sound or words, the Darkin called out to the beasts, hoping to bring them to this prey, that he might somehow slip. Just a glancing touch of his hand, and the host would be hers. Then she could use him to fulfill the ambitions she had held for so long, and vanquish her regrets. The hounds appeared, salivating with their teeth bared. Naafiri's scepter clung to the wrapped dagger with one arm, keenly aware what would happen if it came loose. With his other arm, he drew his sword and attempted to defend himself from the pack. Jaws snapped at the man and his horse from all sides, tearing them, devouring them piece by piece until nothing remained, not even the blade. Naafiri felt the world crash into focus as she became overwhelmed by senses. For the first time in ages, she smelled the dry air which parched her nostrils. The metallic taste of hot blood still coated her mouth. She could see each of the dogs as if from the eyes of a separate packmate. Confusion set in as she felt her sense of self crumble away. She had become the Dune Hounds. Not one of them, but the entire pack. Her mangled dagger embedded within the body of each dog. It seemed a cruel irony. She had found not one vessel, but dozens, and none of them were useful in her grand ambitions. She resented the hounds, hated their smell, their fleas, and most of all, their need for companionship. But in time, the Darkin's bitterness subsided as she began to grasp the true nature of her hosts. Though feral, their collective thoughts formed a wisdom all its own. Separately, the dogs would starve. Together, they were an apex predator, feasting or whatever game they fancied.
So basically, monkey strong together. That's the Darkin we have. Nice.
Were no individuals. The pack was the entity that dominated all. Naafiri realized this concept was not limited to the Dune Hounds. It applied to fish, ants, and humans. It even applied to Darkin. She thought again of her past, personal grudges and petty agendas tearing the Darkin asunder, which in turn toppled them from their rightful place as the regnant killers of Runeterra.
Yeah, this is exactly why Zolani wanted to unite everyone. Of course, she would be using a bit of a mind control, but still, everyone will be united, everyone will be strong to fight against literally everything else.
She knew how to restore them. Now, she just needed to find her siblings and share with them the wisdom of the pack.
So, that was it for the story.
So that's her deal right now. She wants to reunite everyone. She wants to have a family reunion. So bigger. Yeah, I see. Interesting.
To say, my first impression is that it is a good story. But it feels a little bit like it was rushed out.
Yep.
I like how she called out to the hounds to free herself. Not because she wanted the hounds to pick up the blade, but because she wanted the raider to pick up the blade and defend himself, which resulted in a really cool twist. But here, some people don't like the fact that the hounds actually just ate the dagger. One could wonder, why would a dog do that? But from my point of view, the dagger was literally infused with flesh. I'm not that surprised a hungry dog bit into it. Also, some people don't like the part where the blade shattered when the dogs picked it up. After all, the Darkin weapons are supposed to be indestructible. But here, I don't believe the story is trying to tell us that the blade actually broke. But instead, it got fragmented for all the different vessels. So similar to something like the Black Blade which Riven has. Even when it's split into shards, the blade is not truly broken. So I'm fine with that part too. To me, I didn't like when the story said that Naafiri was really powerful and that she almost let the Darkin. Because truth be told, we already have some really powerful Darkin.
Aatrox, Rast, Zolani. We also have the one who is not the totem, the fucking ballista.
Aatrox, Zolani, Balkax, you name it.
This guy.
Just not Rast. He's a really wimpy one. Giving us another
Wait, what?
name it. Just not Rast. He's a really wimpy one.
Well, technically, he was trapped in the gardening section. Because he's planning on murdering fields of wheat. So, you know, there's that.
Giving us another ridiculously powerful Darkin is kinda pointless at this point. Although I do think I understand why they try to give her this powerful trope. It's because they are probably trying to justify the fact that she was able to take over more than just one vessel. So overall, the story is good, but she does feel a bit unnecessary for the overall lore that we got. Although, I have to say, I love the fact that her lore is basically explaining what happened in the cinematic. I like how the two forms of media feed into each other. Lastly, there seems to be some kind of a setup for the future. Because the story did mention that she wants to unite all the Darkin to fulfill some kind of a promise.
Yeah, that's the idea that I'm getting from the story itself. Where is a setup for the future? Yeah, because, you know, at the end, the Aatrox just wants to die. Zolani wants to unite everyone under the mind control, and Naafiri wants to unite every single Darkin and share the secrets of the pack, so they can be united and strong again. The problem I have is that we're not getting the backstory of when they were the Darkin themselves, in their prime of the power, you know? That's the issue I have.
This could lead up to Zolani, but at this point we really have no idea what it is. Speaking of which, it is sad that the story did entirely just ignore Zolani,
exactly,
who is responsible for the entire bloody curse of the Darkin. And in general, she does kind of feel like another Darkin that is just trying to be important. Whether she's gonna succeed at that, we'll see. The good news is that people really like her design and her gameplay. It is all—
well, of course people are gonna love her gameplay, because at the end, it's a first champion in 20 years that Riot released that doesn't have a single ability explanation, taking 3 fucking books. You know? Abilities are pretty straightforward. 1 or 2 sentences, that's what we needed. Also, we need a simple champion because we got fucking tired of the new champions, which every single one of them has a bazillion of passives within passives in just one ability. That's only active of the ability. Then we have the passive ability. Then we have the passive of the passive of the ability. That shit was just straight up bullshit. So, you know, at the end of the day, we got tired of that and we needed something simple. And Riot actually did something good. Finally.
All quite refreshing, and it definitely feels like a good old champion from 2016. The fact that she is actually a champion concepted in 2014 is a topic for another time.
What? What?
Is a topic for another time.
I mean, well, granted, Aurelion Sol was also in 2014. The fuck is that? That is Naafiri. That's the original Naafiri. Hold up. But technically looks the same, no? Just give her the head of the dog and that's the same Naafiri we have in here. Anyway.